mostly cloudy, 57 degrees downtown.
KSL FM Midvale.
KSL Salt Lake City.
From the KSL Common Spirit Health Studios, this is KSL News Radio.
Utah's news, traffic, and weather station.
It's 1 o'clock at KSL News Radio. I'm Dan Bomas. KSL's top story this hour. Many school districts in Utah having to adjust to the ebb and flow of students. Some, like Alpine, are growing and may have to split, and others, like Salt Lake City, are shrinking.
There's another district in our county. They're adjusting a school boundary because they're seeing a decrease in enrollment, but they're hoping by just making some small changes that they can reset their school populations and stabilize for at least a few more years.
Salt Lake City School District spokesperson Yandere Chatwin says her district is having to close 4 elementary schools. Some district can reconfigure to keep from doing something so drastic. Our top national story this hour from ABC News. As the Muslim holy month of Ramadan gets underway, international officials warn the dire situation in one of Gaza's last standing cities is still deteriorating as Israeli forces close in. ABC's Matt Goodman has more.
The death toll in Gaza now surpassing 31,000, according to the Hamas-run health ministry. The main concern remains Rafah, which holds nearly half of Gaza's 2.3 million population, and where the UN says dozens, mostly children, have died from malnutrition.
The health ministry is also saying that some children have been killed by airdrops of supplies falling from the sky. Your money at this moment, the Dow Jones average up on the day, the NASDAQ, though, trending down right now. And our KSL weather looks like we'll get some rain tomorrow and possibly snow the next day. KSL News Time 101.
News doesn't just mean information or dates.
It's the story of our local history being told in real time.
Be a part of the story. This is Tim Hughes and Amanda Dixon.
We hope to be a part of your story. We have you covered on KSL News Radio.
Tax Talk with Straight Talk.
You give and you give. This tax season, you get with Straight Talk Wireless. You get a reliable 5G network and unlimited data and a Samsung Galaxy A14 included when you buy an extended Silver Unlimited plan. So you can give your janky phone to your kid. Yeah!
Switch to Straight Talk for plans starting as low as $25 a line per month for 4 lines. Find us at straighttalk.com. For network management practices, visit straighttalk.com. Device offer ends 4/14/24. Online only. Family plan discount with 4 lines, all on the Silver Unlimited plan. Taxes and fees apply.
For the ones who work hard to ensure their crew can always go the extra mile, and the ones who get in early so everyone can go home on time, there's Grainger, offering professional-grade supplies backed by product experts so you can quickly and easily find what you need. Plus, you can count on access to a committed team ready to go the extra mile for you. Call, click Grainger.com, or just stop by. Grainger, for the ones who get it done.
What would you say if I told you could get a free furnace? What's up, everybody? I'm Mike Wilson with Any Hour Services, and I hope you'd at least say, tell me more. Now, before you get too excited, let me explain how this works and why we do our free furnace sale. We feel like we've got the best HVAC techs around, and we want to keep them. But the only way we can do that is if they're working and providing for their families, so we set money aside for this free furnace sale. We're only able to give you this great deal because you're helping us keep our guys busy. It's actually great if you've been thinking about replacing both your furnace and air conditioner, because when you have Any Hour Services install a new air conditioner, we'll give you a new furnace for just the cost to install it. About $400. The furnace is free, you just pay the labor. All you have to do is call Any Hour Services by March 31st to schedule a free estimate. One of our HVAC supervisors will come to your home and explain all the details. If you think you might be interested, call Any Hour Services today and schedule your free estimate. 801-443-7400. You can Google Any Hour Services. You can even schedule online at anyhourservices.com. No one helps more homeowners than Any Hour Services.
Common Spirit Health has expert orthopedic care that gets you back at it and back to your best. Find skilled orthopedic physicians at Common Spirit locations who specialize in general orthopedics and repair of hips, knees, shoulders, and hands, so you can return to running races or chasing the grandkids. Common Spirit Health. Hospitals, clinics, and caregivers all connected to advance healthcare in Colorado, Kansas, and Utah. Orthopedic care with human kindness is here. Visit mountain.commonspirit.org.
Only one type of burger. For every pallet. Fries are extra. Large in size. We've got the shakes. Going over the brim.
Hey, this is Chris from JCW's. Put a positive, delicious spin on your day at any one of our 5 locations. In Lehigh, American Fork, Provo, South Jordan, or Harriman. JCW's, quality and a lot of it.
Traffic and weather together brought to you by Sinclair's Dino Pay app. Save up to 20 cents per gallon. Here's Ricky Meese.
All quiet along the Wasatch Front. Valley Freeway traffic looking good, including I-15 both directions between Ogden and Provo. Call 801-288-9376 and say you want the KSL special. $99 for 3 rooms cleaned, and they'll throw in a room for free. Zero res. Ricky Meese in the KSL Traffic Center.
Our KSL weather, clouds moving in today with a few mountain snow showers. Then we'll expect valley rain and mountain snow in northern Utah tomorrow, and there's a chance for valley snow on Wednesday. Right now, 57 degrees, mostly cloudy. I'm Dan Bomas from the KSL Common Spirit Health Studios. Listen online at kslnewsradio.com for Utah's news, traffic, and weather station.
Inside Sources. Inside Sources. America's voice of reason. Boyd Matheson on Utah's home for elevated conversation. Inside Sources on KSL News Radio.
Well, yesterday marked the beginning of the Muslim holy month of Ramadan. We're going to talk about that in a number of different frames today. And for many, this will be a month of fasting and prayer and focus on community and family. And for others, it will be much less so, particularly those in Gaza. And the question will become, is there a ceasefire in the offing? Is there a path to peace? And what will it take to get something stable for the long haul? Let's begin.
Think you know the news of the day? Think again with Boyd Matheson on KSL News Radio.
Well, we're going to spend the first 2 segments of the show today focused on the Middle East, talking about what's happening in the Middle East. Obviously, continued negotiations going on for a ceasefire, hostage release, and, of course, long-term, what does that actually look like and sound like? And there's been a lot of political rhetoric going on without a lot of forward movement in terms of actual peacemaking or peacekeeping. So we're going to start with some of the political components to all of this. We're going to be joined by Robert Sherman, who is News Nation's correspondent based in Tel Aviv. He has been everywhere following this, so we'll get a live update from Tel Aviv coming up at 1:20, so stay with us for that. And then rounding out the first hour of the program today, we'll be joined by our friend Maya Jaradat to give us a really interesting perspective of an Israeli married to a Palestinian. And what does that mean, especially in a month like Ramadan? So we'll get into that coming up at 1:50. So stay with us for this whole first hour as we look at the Middle East and all the ramifications and implications there. And let's start with President Joe Biden. After his State of the Union address, the president sat down for an interview with MSNBC, and he was asked about the state of war in Gaza and the actions of war taken by Israeli Prime Minister Benjamin Netanyahu. Here's what President Biden had to say.
What's happening is he has a right to defend Israel, a right to continue to pursue Hamas, but he must pay more attention to the innocent lives being lost as a consequence of the actions taken. In my view, he's hurting Israel more than helping Israel by making the rest of the world, it's contrary to what Israel stands for. And I think it's a big mistake. So I want to see a ceasefire. And I'm starting with a major exchange of prisoners for a 6-week period. We're going into Ramadan. It should be nothing happening, and we should build off of that ceasefire.
The president continued talking about that. Of course, he was hopeful about 10 days ago that there would be a ceasefire, that the hostages would be released. And as we know, that's dicey and a very delicate dance diplomatically. And so no real progress there. But the president remains hopeful that they can get to some sort of ceasefire, maybe a 6-week ceasefire with a majority or a good number of the hostages being released in that process. The president was also asked in that same interview of an invasion of Rafah in the southern Gaza area. Would that cross a red line for the United States? Here's what he said.
It is a red line, but I'm never going to leave Israel. The defense of Israel is still critical. So there's no red line. I'm going to cut off all weapons so they don't have the Iron Dome to protect them. But there's red lines that if he crosses, and he cannot have 30,000 more Palestinians dead as a consequence of going after. There's other ways to deal with the trauma caused by Hamas.
So as the president lays that out, again, sometimes it's less clarity and a little confusion in terms of what the red line is or what the red lines are. And I think that's a difficult challenge and a real struggle for the president in terms of one hand saying, I'm not going to cut off aid to Israel. I'm not going to cut off their ability to have the Iron Dome as a way of protection. At the same time, he's calling on Prime Minister Netanyahu to make sure that there aren't innocent casualties, that Israel is prosecuting this in a way that is more careful, more intentional, less sweeping. The president actually used America's actions taken after 9/11 as an example, showing what can go wrong when the pursuit of terrorists leads to wider destruction.
The first time I went over, I sat with them and I sat with a war cabinet. I said, look, don't make the mistake America made. America made a mistake. We went after bin Laden until we got him. But we shouldn't have gone into the whole thing in Iraq and Afghanistan. It wasn't necessary. It just caused more problems in the race than it's clearly cured.
So that was President Biden framing things in the Middle East over the weekend and clearly sending some signals to Benjamin Netanyahu in terms of red line or red lines. I think that's going to be the interesting debate. Yesterday, during an interview with Politico, Prime Minister Netanyahu said he disagreed with President Biden's comments about the policies of Israel.
Well, I don't know exactly what the president meant. But if he meant by that I'm pursuing private policies against the majority, the wish of the majority of Israelis, and that this is hurting the interests of Israel, then he's wrong on both counts. Number one, these are not my private policies. They're policies supported by the overwhelming majority of the Israelis. They support the action that we're taking to destroy the remaining terrorist battalions of Hamas.
So the focus there on destroying those remaining pockets, those platoons of Hamas inside of Gaza, is the policy. Netanyahu clearly saying that, look, the vast majority of the Israeli people are with them on that issue of security, of having that certainty, not having to live with the fear of another Hamas attack as they did on October the 7th. So that's an interesting dynamic there. Netanyahu rounded out that conversation directly referencing President Biden's red line. And here's how Netanyahu is describing the red line.
Oh, we'll go there. We're not going to leave them. You know, I have a red line. You know what the red line is? That October 7th doesn't happen again. Never happens again.
So that is the red line, according to the Prime Minister of Israel, that the red line is no more October 7th, that does not happen again. And Israel is determined to do what it needs to do to provide that kind of security. So that is their red line. President Biden, of course, is talking about different components in terms of red line. And all of that, I think, is just creating more chaos and more confusion in the region. And nobody's really certain in terms of what comes next. Do the negotiators continue their work? Is there something diplomatically? Will there be a breakthrough of some sort as it relates to the hostages in particular? And is there any goodwill as we are entering Ramadan, as that began yesterday? Will there be anything that will create a bit of a pause? And a pause both from the fighting, both from the attacks that are being launched by the Israeli forces in their attempt to root out Hamas and all of those organizations inside of Gaza. Is there a chance to get the hostages released, all of them? Will they get good, solid numbers in terms of how many are still alive and work through that process as well? Well, we're going to stay with the conversation as it relates to the Middle East. As I mentioned, we'll be joined by Robert Sherman from News Nation. He'll be joining us live from Tel Aviv. It's just after 10 p.m. He'll give us up to the second on the ground insight and perspective in terms of what's going on and, more importantly, what comes next. Stay with us.
Think again on Inside Sources with Boyd Matheson.
I just elevated my checking account with Utah Community Credit Union. Tim, I'm so blown away at what I get with my elevated checking account at UCCU. I get so many benefits. I get cell phone protection and roadside assistance. The one that blows me away the most is telehealth. I actually get zero copay telehealth with my checking account from UCCU.
Did you know you also get a 0.25% loan discount? It's one of the many things. And if you like to travel or you're on the road quite a bit, a free ATM nationwide, 30,000 ATM locations that you can use while you're out.
Utah basketball star Walker Kessler and Utah Community Credit Union have come together to announce this brand new elevated checking account with more benefits, more savings, more online protections than ever before.
Yeah, there's even something for dark web monitoring, which I have never heard of before, but you can find out more by just going to uccu.com.
And open an elevated checking account online or stop by any branch.
UCCU, you're going to love where you bank.
The winners. Best Documentary. Tim Hughes and Amanda Dixon, starring on Utah's Morning News from 5 to 9. Best Duo Performance. Dave Noriega and Debbie Dejanovic from 9 to noon. Best Original Monologue. Boyd Matheson, host of Inside Sources from 1 to 3. And Best 1-Minute Screenplay. Jeff Kaplan's Minute of News, weekdays from 3 to 7. Now starring on a smart speaker near you. Just ask Alexa. Play KSL News Radio.
IVC is celebrating 20 years providing quality service in Utah. You've probably heard their saying by now, life starts when the pain stops. IVC is the most trusted interventional and vein center in the state, and they've been voted Best of Utah Valley 10 years running. The 7 physicians at IVC provide state-of-the-art, comprehensive vein care with many years of experience. The team at IVC takes the time to get to know you and your veins so you're comfortable with the right diagnosis and the right treatment. Patients are like family at IVC. You've also heard many radio ads over the years with real people describing how IVC has dramatically improved their quality of life by eliminating the pain and discomfort caused by varicose veins. Well, what are you waiting for? Don't let vein disease slow you down even one more day, because life starts when the pain stops. Visit iVein.com today to set up a free screening. That's iVein.com.
Mom and Dad used to argue about everything, especially about Dad's drinking. It drove me crazy. It got so bad, I couldn't do my homework. I couldn't concentrate. I absolutely refused to let any of my friends come to our house for any reason. I would have been humiliated if anyone found out how much my dad drank and how loud my mom screamed at him. My family went from totally crazy to quiet, calm, and even peaceful. The only thing that happened is my mom started going to Al-Anon family groups. Her relationship with my dad really changed. I asked Mom if she would take me to her Al-Anon meetings or to Alateen. I wanted to see if I could have a better relationship with my dad. I'm sure glad I did. If someone's drinking troubling you, you might be surprised at what you can learn in an Al-Anon or Alateen family group from people just like you. Call 1-888-4-ALANON or go to alanon.org.
Tim and Amanda.
I don't want to be in the dark about things. I'm sure you don't either, Tim. I mean, I want to know what's going on with the weather. Are my kids safe? You know, where is my money going? I want to be informed.
Yeah, the truth is, it's important information for you and your families to make sure that you are informed so that if some changes are necessary in your life or your children's life, you can make them by listening and starting your morning with us here on KSL.
Wake up with Utah's Morning News with Tim and Amanda, 5 to 9 on KSL News Radio.
At Social Security, we are always thinking of ways to save you time and make things easier. That's why we created My Social Security. Opening a My Social Security account gives you secure access to your personal record and interactive tools tailored for you. You can see if you are eligible to receive benefits, view spousal benefit estimates, and compare retirement benefit estimates at different ages or dates when you want to start receiving benefits. Already receiving benefits? Use your account to change your address, set up or change direct deposit, get a proof of income letter, and more. In most states, you can also request a replacement Social Security card. Save time. Go online. Open a My Social Security account at ssa.gov/myaccount. Social Security, securing today and tomorrow.
produced at U.S. taxpayer expense.
With the three things you need to know this hour, I'm Dan Bomas. First, the Alpine School District starting a process of looking at how to split in the future, while others, like Salt Lake City, trying to handle shrinking enrollment. Second, it's not okay to shoot plastic bullets at annoying teenagers, as one man in Eagle Mountain found out when he was arrested. Third, there's been no agreement on a ceasefire in Gaza, even as the situation for Palestinians trapped there gets more dire by the day. 57 degrees, mostly cloudy in Salt Lake City. And back to Inside Sources on KSL News Radio.
Get deeper insights on the news from Inside Sources.
Welcome back to Inside Sources here on KSL News Radio. It's great to be with you today. As always, I am Boyd Matheson. We're going to stay with the conversation just a little bit longer as it relates to the Middle East. Obviously, as the holy month of Ramadan began yesterday, many have been hoping for a possible ceasefire, a release of hostages. You had a war of words over red line and red lines between Bibi Netanyahu and President Biden over the weekend. And so we wanted to go to someone who is in the middle of this action. I think he's someone who, I don't know if he ever sleeps. Robert Sherman is News Nation's correspondent. He has been on the front lines there in Tel Aviv. It's a little after 10 p.m. there in Israel right now. And Robert has really become my go-to source to really get to the heart and the essence of the issues. And he joins us on the line now. Robert, thanks so much for making time for us.
Hey, thank you for having me. Appreciate it.
So give us kind of your perspective in terms of just the feel right now in Tel Aviv. What are you hearing from your sources? What's the sense? Does anything change as we enter into this holy month of Ramadan? Are there any signs that negotiators are advancing, or are we still just kind of stuck in the middle?
Yeah, that's hard to say. It's hard to say if we are closer to a deal. I mean, it definitely feels as though that we're closer to a deal than we were 3 months ago. But I mean, first there's the question of do both sides really want a deal? Does Hamas want a deal to come together? And that's where there's some debate on if Hamas even wants to see a deal get across the finish line here. But there is a lot of international pressure on all of these sides, which is why there is this sentiment that is in the air that something will come together, perhaps in the 11th hour. But at this point, nothing is coming right now. And I would say is that the Israelis have made clear that they will be going into Rafah. They have to evacuate people from that city before they start doing that. But that could be the next layer of pressure here, is just that as the Israeli military stages around that city and people start leaving, is that the last bit of pressure that is needed to get a deal together? Quite possibly. It's hard to say.
Yeah, that's fascinating. And give me a sense. I thought it was interesting that Prime Minister Netanyahu, in his defense of the strategy and what he's been doing, saying, hey, this is not my policy. The Israeli people are with me on this, that we need to root out Hamas. We have to have that certainty and security. What's your sense on the street and with the people you're interacting with there in Israel?
Yeah, that's a really good question, because every night we see these massive demonstrations here in Tel Aviv, people demanding the hostages be released, demanding the Israeli government make a deal. You listen to what Israeli families of hostages say. Their perspective is any deal that can be made, no matter how unfavorable it would be to Israel or how favorable it would be to Hamas, just make the deal to get your loved ones home. And you can't help but empathize with people who are in that situation. So you see these big demonstrations that are taking place here. But then you talk to people, and it's almost as if like they're like speaking in hushed whispers and saying, we should keep going. We should destroy Hamas. Like that's the sentiment that people don't want to outwardly put out there, to not be disrespectful towards hostage families. But it does seem as though that the prime minister has plenty of support on that initiative of destroying Hamas to try and ensure that October 7th doesn't happen again. That does seem to be the prevailing sentiment here.
Yeah, that's so fascinating. And we had a guest on from the group Whispered in Gaza, and almost kind of the reverse of that in terms of what is actually happening inside of Gaza and people dealing with Hamas. You mentioned this earlier, and I wanted to have you unpack that for us a little bit. In terms of Hamas, it doesn't seem like the incentives are quite right for Hamas, because if there is peace, if there is truth, if there is a two-state solution, Hamas doesn't continue to exist in any of those scenarios.
Right. I mean, that's a really good question. And I mean, you hear people talk about the two-state solution and throw that into the stratosphere. I mean, most people don't understand this fundamentally. Hamas doesn't want a two-state solution.
Right.
It would be wrong to assume that all Palestinians want a two-state solution. There are some. I mean, there are plenty who want statehood to some degree. But I mean, you can even find Condoleezza Rice's comments on this 15 years ago, saying it seems like year by year the interest of Palestinians having a two-state solution seems to get less and less. So everybody has their own vested interest here. But I mean, in terms of Hamas, they don't want a two-state solution. That's not part of their deal here. And there are a lot of questions fundamentally of if a two-state solution is feasible. It would be wrong to frame this as convincing Benjamin Netanyahu and convincing the Israelis that that's all that needs to happen. No, there's a lot more that needs to happen than that. You've got to get the Palestinians on board and all facets of the Palestinians as well. And not everybody agrees. Yeah. So it's much more deep than a lot of people give credence to it.
Yeah. In fact, that's where I wanted to conclude with, Robert, because you've had such a unique perch to observe and watch, and I think it's one of your gifts as a journalist is to see all of that. What is the one thing that you think we're missing back here in the U.S. in terms of conversations about what is going on, from Gaza, the innocent Palestinians, to the Israeli people and their security, the hostages? What's the part of the conversation that you think, wow, we're just missing a piece of this?
I would say that there is this huge element here where I mean, you know, think whatever you want about the conflict, justified, not justified, the war, what have you. Israelis believe that they need the world to believe that October 7th even happened. And that sounds like a crazy thing to say, but you would not believe how many millions of people there are in this region, in the Middle East, who contend that October 7th did not happen, who contend that Hamas invaded Israel to protect them from their own government or things like that. So Israelis believe first and foremost that they have to justify to the rest of the world that they were attacked on October 7th and that they were victims. I mean, some of these images that came out of these kibbutzim on October 7th are the worst things that I have ever seen. And there's a reason you haven't seen a ton of those images. It's because they are that gruesome and that horrific. That's not to discount some of the heartbreaking images that have come out of Gaza and the stories of starvation. That's not to discount that. Two things can be true at once. But I mean, what we saw on October 7th is unlike anything that I thought humanity was capable of before. And that, to me, is the element of this that the American audience is missing, is that, I mean, if that's why Israelis believe that they cannot stop, that they cannot halt their operations here, because I mean it's that gruesome, it's that staggering to look at.
Yeah, fascinating insight as always. Robert Sherman has become my trusted voice for looking at this whole perspective. And Robert, we appreciate your reporting and your commitment. I don't know when you sleep, but we're grateful that you do and that you keep going. And this whole idea of, one, remembering, two, the fact that that compassion demands that we have compassion for whether it's the innocent Palestinian or those that were brutally murdered, or even the Hamas soldiers themselves. The compassion demands that of all of us. Robert, thank you so much for your perspective and your reporting. We look forward to having you back soon. Stay safe.
Thank you very much. Appreciate it.
All right. Again, that's Robert Sherman from News Nation. He is their national correspondent there. He has been in some of the biggest places in the world over the last several years. He's currently in Tel Aviv in Israel. He was in Ukraine before that, and he's just a trusted voice. He's a true journalist that is out there to get to the heart and the essence of the issues. And so when I'm looking for my shaping and my framing of what's going on, Robert Sherman is a great source. He should be part of your sources, because we all need a number of sources that we go to so that we can get to the truth. And I think as we look at how this continues to play out, especially as we move through the holy month of Ramadan, will there be an opportunity for peace? Who is really interested in peace, and who benefits for the lack of peace? Those are all questions that we have to get to as we move it all forward. Big thanks to Robert Sherman. Again, big coverage on the Middle East. We'll come back to Ramadan coming up at 1:50. Maya Jaredot's going to join us on that conversation. Stick around. We'll step aside for bottom of the hour news. More Inside Sources coming up next.
It's 1:30 at KSL News Radio. I'm Dan Bomas. KSL's top local story this hour. The man accused of killing former Utah football player Aaron Lowe has pleaded guilty in his case. Book Mawad Book will be sentenced at the end of April for 1 count of first-degree murder, 1 count of attempted murder. Investigators say Book got into an argument with Lowe at a party back in 2021, shot and killed him and another person. Book was also accused of that other shooting. That person survived. Police have arrested a man accused of shooting multiple plastic rounds at a group of teens in Eagle Mountain. Apparently, the man had been dealing with kids ringing his doorbell and running off. KSL News Radio's Adam Small has details.
According to arrest documents, 70-year-old Michael Roberts shot multiple gray plastic rounds at a car that 6 teenagers were getting in across from his home near SR 73 and Mount Airy Drive. Roberts claimed the car was the same color as the one he believes was involved in the previous times he was ding-dong ditched. Since neither the kids nor the police knew whether he shot a real gun or not, they arrested him at his home at gunpoint.
Roberts has been booked on suspicion of aggravated assault and criminal mischief. Our top national story this hour from ABC News. President Biden's budget for the coming year is on its way to Congress. Shalonda Young is director of the White House Office of Management and Budget.
The budget reduces the deficit by about $3 trillion by making our tax code fairer. Congressional Republicans want to increase the deficit by $3 trillion, including by attempting to repeal the parts of the Inflation Reduction Act that take on special interests like Big Pharma and wealthy tax cheats.
Congress doesn't have to go along with anything in the budget. It's still working on spending bills for the current year. Your money at this moment, the Dow Jones average up on the day now, about 51 points. The NASDAQ is down 54. And our KSL weather looks like we'll see some rain tomorrow and snow the next day. KSL News Time, 1:32.
You know what's great about KSL's traffic coverage? Trained traffic reporters and real listeners.
Trading information and making the commute safer and faster for everyone.
Every 10 minutes on the nines, we have you covered on KSL News Radio.
Drowning in IRS debt? If you can't afford to pay your IRS debt due to economic hardship, you can now be free of IRS collection efforts by taking advantage of a special IRS tax hardship program. This program allows Americans who owe the IRS to resolve their delinquent tax debt once and for all. In some cases, maybe even reducing what you owe significantly. An open phone line has been established by Community Tax for consumers to call and see if they qualify. Simply dial 800-519-6360. If you owe back taxes to the IRS and cannot afford to pay them back or have years of unfiled tax returns, help is standing by. Just call the Community Tax Helpline today at 800-519-6360 for the help that you need. Don't take on the IRS alone. They can attack your wages, savings, pension, home, and even your Social Security check. Call 800-519-6360 to see if you qualify. That's 800-519-6360.
What was that? That is Business Phone Bliss with the Ooma Cloud Phone System. It handles all our voice, video, and messaging needs.
You sound very...
Calm, I am. Ooma has everything I need to run my business more efficiently, like virtual receptionist, call routing, and video conferencing. And it starts at just $19.95 per month per user, plus taxes and fees.
Ooma.
Nice. Find your business comm at ooma.com/radio.
To thank you for 40 unforgettable years, Dell Technologies is celebrating with anniversary savings on their most popular tech. For a limited time only, save on select next-gen PCs, like the XPS 13 Plus, powered by Intel Core processors, and more. Plus, curate your dream setup with great deals on select monitors, mice, and more must-have electronics and accessories. When you shop online at Dell.com/deals, you'll have access to leading-edge technology and free shipping on everything. Again, that's Dell.com/deals.
Alpine Home Medical, we bring wellness home.
Hi, I'm Jay Broadbent with Alpine Home Medical. This is a story that came to us from a real customer, and I wanted to share it with you.
I purchased a breast pump through Alpine using my insurance. The ladies at the store were incredibly helpful with showing me my options, discussing my insurance coverage, and getting everything squared away. They were incredibly kind, too. I would definitely recommend Alpine to everyone.
We know when you walk through our doors, you deserve to be cared for. We really do have the best staff in the state. Discover the Alpine Home Medical difference. When you need assistance, we're here for you. You should know we accept most major insurances, so stop by any of our 11 locations today and explore our high-quality inventory. We love hearing about your experiences. Visit us online at alpinehomemedical.com.
Alpine Home Medical, we bring wellness home.
Traffic and weather together brought to you by Sinclair's DinoPay app. Save up to 20 cents per gallon. Here's Ricky Meese.
We are looking at a crash-free, delay-free drive on all the Valley freeways. We have had a little bit of busy traffic both directions of 4th West, and that's between North Temple and about 300 South. Need a perfect event venue? There's a place. This is the place, Heritage Park. Ideal for weddings, events, featuring 11 venues, beautiful grounds, affordability for any occasion and celebration. Call or visit thisistheplace.org. Ricky Meese in the KSL Traffic Center.
And our KSL weather clouds move in today with a few mountain snow showers, and then we can expect valley rain and mountain snow in northern Utah tomorrow. There's a chance for valley snow on Wednesday. Right now, 57 degrees, mostly cloudy. I'm Dan Bomas from the KSL Common Spirit Health Studios. Listen online at kslnewsradio.com. We're Utah's news, traffic, and weather station.
Inside Sources. Inside Sources. America's voice of reason. Boyd Matheson on Utah's home for elevated conversation. Inside Sources on KSL News Radio.
Well, whenever we're trying to make some headway or get a little clarity out of the clutter and the chaos that is our nation's capital, we often turn to Eric Boehm, reporter at Reason, covers economic policy, trade policy, and the elections. And I had to get both a little bit of a chuckle and then a little bit of a cringe looking back at the State of the Union from President Joe Biden last Thursday. Of course, previous version of the State of the Union, there was a great unanimity amongst everyone that everyone was going to save Social Security. And so everyone thought we had just a great moment. And then this year, President Biden went right back to it in terms of what the evil, awful Republicans were going to do. But then it got really weird and confusing. And so Eric's going to help us break all of that down in terms of who's paying their fair share. What does this have to do with Social Security? And Eric, it's only Monday, and here we are.
Well, it's good to be here, Boyd. You can pencil me in for later in the week if we don't get through everything here, bring me back around.
Awesome. Well, let's start with the State of the Union and, of course, the president calling out saying Republicans are going to, get rid of it. No one's paying their fair share. What was he really saying? What does it really actually all mean?
Yeah, there wasn't actually a lot of policy in the State of the Union address, which is, in some ways typical. It's become less and less of a policy-focused speech in recent years. And this is, of course, a re-election year for the president, so we expect it to be more of a politically focused speech, a lot of talk about saving democracy, standing up to Russia, things like that. But, yeah, really, I was actually surprised by the lack of policy specifics in there. One of the things I did pull out of it was, the few sentences that he had about Social Security. Biden said that, working people who built this country pay more into Social Security than millionaires and billionaires do. It's not fair. And he promised to, quote, protect and strengthen Social Security and make the wealthy pay their fair share. No specifics about exactly what that would look like. But that, to me, sounds like it's gesturing towards this idea of raising the cap on the payroll tax. This is a thing that, those of us who follow the debate over Social Security pay attention to and are aware of. Many people probably don't know this, but the payroll tax that you pay on Social Security is actually capped at just the first $168,000 or so of income. Anything you earn above that is not subject to the tax. And then benefits are also capped, depending on how much you pay in, obviously. But one of the ideas, with Social Security running this giant deficit, one of the ideas to shore it up is to either raise that cap, maybe eliminate the cap altogether, or maybe put in a new tax at a higher level and leave a gap so that the cap would still exist. But then once you got up above, say, $400,000, something like that, the tax might kick in again. So there's a bunch of these ideas. Again, not a lot of specifics from Biden in his speech, but he seems to be at least signaling some interest in moving in that direction.
Yeah, so let's deal with both parts of that. So he did get the two applause lines in on who was going to pay their fair share on it. But then let's get into this whole idea in terms of the cap. As you mentioned, it's currently it's set at $168,000. And I think one of the interesting things there, one, in terms of what would it actually raise if that was either eliminated or raised. And then the other thing is, who ends up really paying that? It seems to me that this is not going to impact the wealthy the most, but maybe kind of those in-betweeners.
Yeah, sure. That's right. And some of this would depend on, again, the specifics that we don't have. So it's hard to break it all down. But look, I'm a libertarian. I'm opposed to raising taxes pretty much in any circumstances. I think that's a bad idea. Stop taking money out of people's wallets. That being said, if you're going to have a payroll tax and you're going to have a Social Security program funded by a payroll tax, well, that cap as it exists now is totally arbitrary. So, like, as a principle, there's nothing against raising it, right? Like, I mean, we could debate whether it should exist at all, or we should debate whether the program should be funded in a different way, or whether it should be privatized, whatever. If you're going to have this program, the cap is totally arbitrary. So, okay, go ahead, raise it. It's not the worst idea in the world. The Congressional Budget Office says that you would raise about $1 trillion in revenue over 10 years. Again, they're making certain assumptions about how you would raise the cap and whether benefits would increase, whatever. But their estimate is about $1 trillion over 10 years. That's a lot of money. It doesn't actually get you close to the amount of money you would need to solve the deficit that Social Security is facing. The deficit is about $2.8 trillion over the next 10 years, and it's actually bigger when you go beyond that if nothing is done. And so you're still running into insolvency. Maybe you're pushing off insolvency a few years. You're pushing off the program running a deficit, until maybe the end of this decade, all the way, 5 years into the future. So it just doesn't actually get you where you need to go as far as the math for the program. So it's one idea. It's obviously, again, Biden is gesturing towards this idea. Not a lot of specifics there. And okay, it's a fine starting point maybe, but it's far from being the full solution.
Yeah, for sure. And looking at, maybe it does buy a little bit of time, or it kicks the can far enough down the road that the current occupant of the White House won't have to worry about it, or the current Congress won't have to deal with it. One of the things that you pointed out in your piece in terms of the serious trade-offs of this kind of policy, if you play this out, is that we continue to increase the taxes on working Americans to pay for those that are retirees. And that's obviously with shrinking birth rates and a host of other things and life expectancy. That seems to be a rabbit hole that has no bottom.
Yeah, that's exactly the point here is that, look, you can, as you said, buy a few years, kick the can down the road by, raising or eliminating or playing some sort of game with the way that the cap operates. But ultimately, that's not addressing the ultimate problem here, which is that the program, Social Security, pays out more money than it takes in. Most people collect more over the course of their lifetime than they pay in. It's projected to run these massive, trillions and trillions of dollars of deficits over the next few decades. It's simply dumping more money into a program that is fundamentally broken on the fiscal side just simply doesn't make a lot of sense to me. To your point there, I think that's exactly right. The way Social Security works is, I think people assume sometimes that the money that comes out of your paycheck gets put away somewhere in a safety deposit box or something, and then you get it back when you retire. That's not true.
Yeah.
It's just a conveyor belt. It just takes money out of your paycheck and deposits it in the bank accounts of current retirees. It's current workers funding current retirees. So if you raise that cap, you're taking more money out of current workers' paychecks to just, basically enlarge the amount of money that's being transferred to current retirees. That doesn't address any of the underlying problems. any of the fiscal problems, obviously.
Right.
It also doesn't address what I think is the big political problem with Social Security, which is that so many people feel unsecure about Social Security because they hear that it's running a deficit. They hear that there's going to be changes possible in the program. And because it's not their money, because you don't actually have a property right to that money, people are understandably kind of freaked out by the idea that politicians could just make changes that devastate their retirement planning. So, this is why I think ultimately some sort of privatization or partial privatization is the way to go on this, because it would give people the knowledge and the security that their money is actually there, and it's not just being taken out of their paycheck to fund a program that is, fundamentally broken.
The conveyor belt that is broken that keeps taking the money out of the wallet. All right, Eric, we're going to have you come back.
Yeah, the conveyor belt runs just fine. But the math is broken.
Definitely. All right, Eric Babe, reporter at Reason. We're going to have him come back because it's going to be a long week, folks. Eric, thanks so much for joining us today.
Thanks so much, Boyd.
All right, we'll step aside for a quick break. We'll be back.
Believe it or not, most small businesses don't have a 401k. If you don't have a 401k, you are missing out on the greatest wealth creation tool ever created. I'm Jeff Jr. with Trajan Wealth, and many 401ks are overpriced for the employer, have expensive and underperforming investment options, and have tedious administrative provisions. Not at Trajan Wealth. We can set up a 401k for a company for only $8 per employee, a $65 per plan fee, plus a small advisory fee. That's right, not thousands or even the tens of thousands you've been quoted. And do it all in less time than it takes to sit in traffic. If you have 5 or more employees, these 401ks will help you attract and retain top talent. And if you're an employee and don't have a 401k, tell your boss. Call Trajan Wealth today. Call 801-899-7600. That's 801-899-7600.
Services offered through a third-party partner.
KSL Broadcast Group contests are open to participants 13 years of age and older that are residents of Utah, Idaho, Wyoming, and Nevada, unless otherwise specified. Employees or agents of the station, Bonneville International Corporation, or other area radio stations, or any entity associated with the contest may not enter. Persons who have won in the last 90 days from a station contest or event are not eligible. Full general contest rules are available at kslnewsradio.com.
Advertising used to be simple. Your options were radio, TV, newspaper, and let's not forget the yellow pages. Now it seems like a tidal wave of options. Podcast, cable TV, streaming, OTT, CTV, audio networks, smart speakers.
On top of that, you need digital marketing for your website along with SEM, SEO, display, video, YouTube, email, and all the social media platforms.
Look, you're the expert in your business. Wouldn't it be nice to have an expert to market you? We are Bonneville Salt Lake, the local marketing and media company you know and trust. We reach customers across all digital and social platforms and have the reach of traditional advertising available as well. We find your customer anytime, any place, anywhere on any device here in Utah or anywhere in the world. We work to optimize your results with our in-house local team of experts, providing you with qualified leads, not just impressions. Contact Stephanie Palmer at KSL for a free consultation, including a complete digital audit with no obligation or cost to you. Email spalmer@ksl.com. That's spalmer@ksl.com.
They say it takes 10,000 hours to become an expert. You may not have that kind of time for weatherization, energy efficiency, and appliance rebates, but we do. Dominion Energy's ThermWise program has experts who know where and how to save money. They help homeowners and businesses find simple ways to conserve natural gas and rebates through upgrades that may help to save even more. We put our energy into helping you conserve it, so you can spend your 10,000 hours becoming an expert in what matters to you. Start with a home energy plan at thermwise.com.
See the high-flying dunks, show-stopping blocks, and crowd-silencing threes at Delta Center this season. With an action-packed schedule, it's easy to get to a Jazz game. Pick out an unmissable matchup, or just a tip-off time that works for you. It's time to put on your Jazz gear and head to the game. Come with a friend, a loved one, or as a group. See all available tickets and options at utahjazz.com or call or text 801-355-DUNK.
Any Hour Services can help you make sure your furnace keeps you warm this winter. Whether you need a tune-up, a repair, or a second opinion about replacing it, call Any Hour Services or visit anyhourservices.com.
With the 3 things you need to know this hour, I'm Dan Bomas. First, The man accused of killing U of U football player Aaron Lowe has taken a plea deal on murder and attempted murder charges. Second, a man from Eagle Mountain has been accused of shooting plastic bullets at teenagers in his town. And third, one of Utah's pioneer-era temples is getting a media preview today after extensive renovations. Right now, 57 degrees, mostly cloudy in Salt Lake City. And back to Inside Sources on KSL News Radio.
Hear elevated conversation on crucial issues. Boyd Matheson on Inside Sources.
Welcome back to Inside Sources here on KSL News Radio. It's great to be with you today. As always, as we mentioned off the top of the show, that Ramadan began yesterday, marking the beginning of the holy month. Fasting, prayer of community and connection. Obviously, there's still a lot of misinformation, a lot of misunderstanding in our world, especially with areas that are just in crisis and chaos right now. And I always love to turn to our friend Maya Guneri, who's a journalist, a writer, spent nearly a decade covering Israel and the occupied Palestinian territories. She's the author of The Unchosen, The Lives of Israelis' New Others. She's a brilliant writer. She's a great thinker, a friend of the show. And Maya, welcome back.
Hi, thanks for having me.
So give us some sense as we roll into Ramadan. You were so helpful for all of us last year in kind of going through your experience and going through that, particularly with your children and understanding that. So just kind of give us a sense as we roll in and a little refresher course when it comes to Ramadan.
Yeah, so Ramadan is a month of fasting, but the fasting is just one element of the holiday, right? It's about, deep kind of spiritual focus. Prayers are longer at night. It's also about community. It's about gathering together and being part of the community. And it's also about charitable acts. It's very important to be, donating money in this time, engaging in different, whatever charitable acts one can do for the community. These are all elements of Ramadan. So I think oftentimes, it gets kind of eclipsed as this, everyone's fasting, but it's so much more than that. And it's not just about the fast, it's also about the flipping, right? So people fast during the day, but then at night, they break the fast at sundown, have prayers. There's extended kind of, religious study. And then there's also a morning meal before sunup called suhoor. And I think that putting the whole community on the schedule, also strengthens the sense of unity for many Muslims. Yeah.
Yeah, I think that's such an important component to all of that. There is this kind of gathering, the morning, having that meal before the sun comes up, in the evening, coming back together again, and this extended period prayer. You mentioned that the prayer time is extended; it's longer than normal, and that it's a time to maybe just step back a little bit from the kind of the race and chase of the world, and stay. We always like to say it on this show: stay with the question a little longer, even if the question is prayer.
Absolutely. I think Ramadan is definitely about that, right? About and I think that's very much what the fast is about. I mean, the fast is about, one of the things the fast is about empathy and empathizing with people who have less and empathizing with the poor and feeling the literal hunger that other people experience, right? And so there's an element, too, of humility involved in that, right? That you are humbling yourself by feeling that hunger and remembering that at the end of the day, it's God who's in charge, right? So those are all, beautiful, so many different beautiful themes woven through Ramadan. And I think that, for me, I mean, even though I'm not Muslim, I do fast for Ramadan because my children are, both Muslim and Jewish. And typically, I mean, our home is very typical in that in interfaith relationships, the woman ends up oftentimes doing all the religions in the home. So, right, which is hilarious, kind of, if you think about it. But so I do the fast for Ramadan, even though I'm Jewish. And, for me, it's very clarifying. It really kind of, during the day, sometimes it can get kind of hard to work as my blood sugar drops and I can't concentrate. But it also reminds me, it just kind of puts my head more in the spiritual realm.
Yeah.
And it kind of helps clarify and focus like what is truly important in life, you know? And it's not, you know, I don't know. We just get so wrapped up in the petty things. And I feel like Ramadan kind of gets your head in that larger, you know.
I love that.
Yeah.
I think that's so vital. And one of the things that I love, Maya, is that you just fully embrace these things with your children. And obviously for most of our listeners, as they, you know, watch the news, we've been covering, of course, a lot of the tragic events going on in the Middle East, whether it was the attacks on October the 7th, whether it's all the innocents that are suffering inside of Gaza, the innocent Palestinians. And it's so easy to just kind of put all of those into different buckets and boxes and move them out. And I love the fact that you have this very unique perspective, a lived perspective of being Jewish and having children in a Muslim home as well. Just describe for us, what is it that we're all missing in the conflict conversations that we see?
Oh, that's a great question. And it's one, you know, that we've been circling around in our home in a light way because our children are still so young and we're not trying to hit them with the heaviest, you know, aspects of what's going on there. But, you know, to me, one of the things I was struck by when I lived there, and I've been struck by over and over and over again, is that we've just set all these kind of arbitrary categories for ourselves and for others. And it's tragic because I don't think that God looks at us and distinguishes between Jews and Palestinians. And so that's one of the most, tragic parts of the whole thing to me is that we're just so wrapped up in ideas about who belongs where. And, we've got this, you know, arbitrary border and these people can't come in and these people can't go out. And it's truly tragic. And, in our home, we don't think that way. And Ramadan, you know, our practice of Ramadan in our home reinforces that. But, this Ramadan is also obviously a little bit darker for me. And I was reflecting on that today because I am thinking about the fact that I'm choosing to fast and that there are Palestinians in Gaza right now who are not getting to make that choice. They are having a fast forced upon them by, the blockade. And, that has been even tighter, obviously, since October 7th. But we need to kind of, I think, keep that front of mind that the suffering of the Palestinian people in Gaza is not going to make Israel any safer in the long run.
Such great perspective as always. And Maya, I know you have a number of writing projects that you're working on. We're going to follow those really closely. I won't give any spoilers there, but we appreciate your writing, your thinking, and your perspective, both as you celebrate Ramadan as part of your home. Ramadan Mubarak to you and your family and to your Jewish ancestry and heritage and life as well. You are just in such a unique perspective and give such good light for all of us to maybe rethink what we think we know about what we think is a conflict, and maybe we all just need to look at it a little differently.
Yeah. Thank you so much for having me, Boyd.
All right. Again, that's Maya. Always so great to have her on the show. Maya Guarneri, great writer, great thinker, and just has this amazing perspective. She is Jewish, and she celebrates Ramadan with her children, so they have that tradition in their home as well. And imagine those conversations. I loved what Maya said about fasting, and that this year, as she is fasting during Ramadan, she's also thinking about those Palestinians inside of Gaza who are in essence fasting, but not by choice. And the fact that she has the choice to do that. And I love how she describes the challenges of that for her going through the day. And if you're having a morning meal and then a meal after sunset, sometimes that middle portion can be pretty tricky as the blood sugar drops, as she said, especially if you're trying to do things like being creative and writing and all of those, plus being a mom. She does extraordinary work there. And so, again, always grateful to Maya Guarneri for her perspective and for taking some time to join us, especially as we begin and march through the month of Ramadan. And we'll continue to watch all of that and so many things to continue to cover as it relates to the Middle East. If you missed the first segments of the show today, we talked about kind of the war of words heating up between Israeli Prime Minister Benjamin Netanyahu and President Biden. in terms of what the red lines are and what the red lines mean and how that moves forward. There's a host of conversations that we have to get to in terms of what peace looks like. We were also joined by Robert Sherman from News Nation, live from Tel Aviv, to get some interesting perspective in terms of where he thinks the people are as he talks to them on the street there in Israel. So it's complicated, it's difficult, but there is a path to peace. But I think it all starts. I think Ramadan is a great metaphor in terms of all of us stepping back, being a little more intentional, maybe praying a little bit longer with a little bit more purpose, and being grateful for so many different things. We'll step aside for top of the hour news. More Inside Sources coming up next.
KSL FM Midvale.
KSL Salt Lake City.
From the KSL Common Spirit Health Studios, this is KSL News Radio.
Utah's news, traffic, and weather station.
It's 2 o'clock at KSL News Radio. I'm Dan Bomas. KSL's top story this hour. The International Olympic Committee says they are not considering any new stadiums that Salt Lake City might build as it reviews the city's Olympic bid for 2034. IOC Olympic Games Executive Director Christophe Duby told media today he's excited about all the venues that Salt Lake already has in place.
Salt Lake City offers it all, starting with the existing venues, the incredible expertise that has been developed over time across all the Olympic sports.
Duby says they may consider the new stadiums as possible venues, but they won't be tied to any Olympic bid. Reporters getting their first look inside the newly renovated Manti, Utah Temple of the Church of Jesus Christ of Latter-day Saints today. President Russell M. Nelson announced plans to renovate the Manti Temple in 2019. It was originally dedicated in 1888. The public will get a chance to see the renovated temple starting later this week. The rededication is scheduled for April 21st. Our top national story this hour from ABC News. U.S. Secretary of State Anthony Blinken today on a trip to Jamaica to attend an emergency meeting with Caribbean leaders to talk about the ongoing crisis in Haiti. Here's the State Department's Matthew Miller.
We have had a level 4 travel alert for Haiti for more than 4 years now, making very clear to American citizens that, number one, they should not travel to Haiti, that it is not safe to travel to Haiti, and number two, that if they are in Haiti, they should leave as soon as it's safe for them to do so.
Criminal gangs have taken control of much of Haiti's capital, Port-au-Prince. Your money at this moment, the Dow Jones average up on the day, 47 points. The NASDAQ down 65. And our KSL weather looks like clouds are building up, and we'll see rain and snow in the next couple of days. KSL News Time, 2:02.
We hope you have the right app on your phone for news. You probably have dozens.
But the KSL News Radio app, well, it makes our live stream super easy.
Plus, our talk shows are right there as podcast for your workday.
That's the app for KSL News Radio.
Good morning. I'm the 40% off window company.
40% off? Of what?
Hey, 40% off.
Yeah, I'll bet it's your biggest sale of the year. This week only, because you need a model home in our neighborhood. Well, nothing. It's baloney. Hi, this is Kathy.
I'm Doug of Window World. When you hear those things, you know you've entered the baloney zone.
Resist the force of the baloney zone.
Find Window World online at windowworldutah.com.
Or call Window World at 281-8111. That's 281-8111.
And that's no baloney.
IVC is celebrating 20 years providing quality service in Utah. You've probably heard their saying by now, life starts when the pain stops. IVC is the most trusted interventional and vein center in the state, and they've been voted Best of Utah Valley 10 years running. The 7 physicians at IVC provide state-of-the-art, comprehensive vein care with many years of experience. The team at IVC takes the time to get to know you and your veins so you're comfortable with the right diagnosis and the right treatment. Patients are like family at IVC. You've also heard many radio ads over the years with real people describing how IVC has dramatically improved their quality of life by eliminating the pain and discomfort caused by varicose veins. Well, what are you waiting for? Don't let vein disease slow you down even one more day, because Life starts when the pain stops. Visit iVein.com today to set up a free screening. That's iVein.com.
Only one type of burger. For every pallet. Fries are extra. Large in size. We've got the shakes. Going over the brim.
Hey, this is Chris from JCW's. Put a positive, delicious spin on your day at any one of our 5 locations. In Lehigh, American Fork, Provo, South Jordan, or Harriman. JCW's, quality and a lot of it.
What's keeping you from learning the language you've always wanted to speak?
Too hard. Takes too long.
Not with Babbel. Babbel's interactive lessons, podcasts, games, and more make learning fun.
Fun isn't hard.
Right. And in 10 minutes a day, Babbel's bite-sized lessons are designed to get you having real conversations in as little as 3 weeks.
That's not long. It's not hard. It's perfect.
It starts here. Go to Babbel.com to try for free. That's BABBEL.com. Babbel.com.
Tired of hearing scary radio ads about the IRS? Tax Relief Advocates is different. TRA is here to tell you that if you owe money to the IRS, whether it's $5,000 or $500,000, we have a solution. TRA can eliminate or reduce what you owe to the IRS with zero risk to you. If we can't reduce your tax debt, then you pay nothing. We have a 5-star rating on Google and Yelp and an A+ with a BBB. End your tax nightmare today by visiting TRA.com or call 800-583-6681. That's 800-583-6681.
Traffic and weather together, brought to you by Sinclair's Dino Pay app. Save up to 20 cents per gallon. Here's Ricky Mace.
Valley Freeway traffic rolling along with no problems. We do have a report of a possible accident 90th South near 3200 West. Call 801-288-ZERO and get the KSL special. 1 room cleaned starting at just $25 with a 4-room minimum and 25% off all other services like tile or rugs using promo code CLEANWEEK. 0 res. Ricky Meese in the KSL Traffic Center.
And our KSL weather has been warm today, 57 degrees right now. Clouds move in with a few mountain snow showers today. Then tomorrow, valley rain, mountain snow, a chance for valley snow on Wednesday, mostly cloudy right now. I'm Dan Bomas from the KSL Common Spirit Health Studios. Listen online at kslnewsradio.com. We're Utah's news, traffic, and weather station.
Inside Sources. Inside Sources. America's voice of reason. Boyd Matheson on Utah's home for elevated conversation. Inside Sources on KSL News Radio.
Last Friday, I shared with you some highlights of a lecture I attended by scholar and great thinker, Professor Robbie George from Princeton. I also had the opportunity to do a sit-down, deep-dive interview with him to get into some of the most central principles that our nation is built upon. It aired yesterday on KSL TV's Sunday edition, and today I wanted to share with you some of that conversation to get us past some of the headlines to some of those core principles that will keep the nation rolling forward. Let's begin.
Think you know the news of the day? Think again with Boyd Matheson on KSL News Radio.
So last Thursday, Robbie George gave a lecture at the Wheatley Institute at Brigham Young University. And before that lecture, I had the opportunity to sit down with Professor George and have a deep dive conversation about his view on the Constitution, civic virtues, the challenges that face our country today, and how we actually move forward together to face them and improve the unity of the nation. I began the conversation by asking Professor George about the loss of institutional trust that we're seeing across America and how the principles of federalism laid out in the Constitution can actually lay a path towards restoring that trust. Here's what he had to say.
Well, the first thing I want to say is that you're absolutely right on the data. That all the data show that we have had not only a loss, a collapse of trust, and not just in governmental institutions. It's important to see this, Boyd. We've lost our trusts even in the institutions of religion, the institutions of civil society. We've lost our concern about and our sense of the importance of the family. On this question of federalism, one of the great structural protections of freedom in our Constitution, when the American revolutionaries, against all odds and surprising even themselves, defeated the British and were able to become an independent nation, to create an independent nation. The question they faced, of course, is, well, now what kind of government will we establish here? They could have said, let's establish a new and better monarchy. And there was some sentiment in favor of that, mainly because they had the ideal monarch. They had George Washington, a guy who didn't want to be king. That's your best king, a guy who doesn't want to be king. But they opted instead for a republic, but they did so in fear and trembling. And that's because all previous republics, going back into antiquity or the Middle Ages or the Renaissance city-states, all previous republics had failed. And when they failed, they tended to fail by collapsing into the worst forms of tyranny. So our founders knew they faced a real challenge there. How were they going to meet the challenge? Well, they looked at previous forms of government, and they noticed that in all other states, all other nations, there was a central government that basically had a lock-on power, and it could delegate some of that power, devolve state power to regional or provincial governments or to municipal governments. But at the end of the day, there was an all-powerful central state. And that, they thought, was the real danger to liberty and to Republican order. Too much power concentrated in the central state. Human nature being what it is, unchecked, unlimited power, power concentrated in one place is a bad thing. We need checks and balances. We need accountability. We need limitations on power. So the first limitation that they came up with, and it was such an ingenious idea, was to establish the new government of the United States not as a government of general jurisdiction, like the government of France or the government of England, having all power and maybe delegating some down to regional or municipal governments, but as a government of delegated and enumerated powers, given certain powers and denied all other powers. And that left the states then as governments of general jurisdiction exercising plenary authority, or what we in our tradition call police powers, the powers to protect public health, safety, and morals, and advance the common good. So that division of powers, limiting the power of the dangerous, faraway, unaccountable central government, that was the real key to the system. And then they introduced, of course, even at the federal level, the doctrine of the separation of powers, which was to make sure that there were those checks and balances, and therefore the accountability that they hoped would enable Republican government for the first time in history to long endure, as Lincoln would later say, to survive.
Robbie, as we look at how we get down to the virtue component to this, what is the we the people? One of the things that has been a real hallmark of your career, your life, is that focus on those core principles, those core virtues, and looking at it from an aspect of truth, that we should be truth seekers and truth speakers and forever learners. Explain that for us.
Well, I think that's the job of a teacher. I consider it my vocation as a professor, and that is to form our students, our young men and women, those entrusted to our care, to our charge, to be determined truth seekers, courageous truth speakers, and lifelong learners. And I think if we form our students in that way, they will also be loyal and effective citizens, enabling this grand experiment in ordered liberty and Republican government to go on, passing it on to their children and grandchildren and so forth down through the years.
Yeah, so important. We had an interesting discussion this past week talking about going to the Declaration and this pursuit of happiness phrase. And of course, we usually use that pursuit of happiness when we're justifying narcissism and self-absorbed.
It's such a misunderstanding.
So far off. So dive into that. The fact that the founders really believed that in order to pursue happiness, you had to pursue virtue.
They did indeed. Unfortunately, the word happiness has taken on connotations quite different from the connotations the word had at the time of the American founding. When we think of happiness today, we think of a pleasant psychological state, which might be induced by drugs or being put on some sort of machine. You take enough Valium, you're happy, right? You got a smile on your face. That's not what the founding generation of Americans meant by happiness. The concept had a moral inflection. You can still get a feel for that because we can still understand what someone's saying if they say, or if we read in an old document, happy the man who walks in the way of justice. We know when we hear that sentence that doesn't mean that the man who walks in the way of justice is going to go around with a smile on his face and in a happy state of mind. It means more something like blessed is the man, fortunate is the man. The concept of happiness that we have in the Declaration is really one much more like beatitude, something like that. So pursuing happiness doesn't mean doing what you want, whatever you want. You know, being dragged around by your wants, being the slave of your desires and passions, no matter how wayward they are. No, pursuing happiness means trying to do the right thing, living virtuously, fulfilling your responsibilities, taking pleasure in doing the right thing rather than trying to find one's pleasure wherever one's emotions or feelings or desires are pushing one.
You've been part of some extraordinary conversations, interfaith, across the political spectrum. What kind of conversations do we need to get to in this country? Clearly, we need a space for people to bring their whole authentic self into the public square, that faith shouldn't be just consigned to the synagogue, the mosque, the chapel, the pew, or the closet. How should we be having those?
Table, or if you're on your knees at bedtime.
Yeah.
It's got to be in the public.
Yeah. And so how do we create space for that? And one of the other things you alluded to earlier is that we have to maintain that kind of radical curiosity about why someone who believes different or thinks different does that. We might actually learn something.
Exactly right. Our nation is exceptional. We have this concept of American exceptionalism, and it doesn't mean, hey, we're better than everybody else, we're more virtuous people. We know we're made out of the same flesh and blood as anybody else. We've got the same fallen nature as anybody else. We've got our sins and faults and failings. No, what's exceptional about America, what the concept of American exceptionalism is the idea that unlike nations whose foundations and whose sources of unity are in blood and soil, or throne and altar, a common ethnicity, a common race, a common religion, a common cultural heritage, and so forth. Instead of that, which we can't have in the United States because our people come from everywhere, from East Asia, from Africa, from South Asia, from Europe. Our people are many races, many ethnicities, many different religions, many different cultural backgrounds and traditions. Our foundation and unity can't be in that. Rather, the sources of our unity, our foundation, are in our shared commitment to the principles of the Declaration and the Constitution, to the idea that human beings have a certain profound, inherent, and equal dignity. That it doesn't matter where we come from, what language we speak, it doesn't matter what religion we practice, it doesn't matter who our ancestors were. What matters is our commitment. What unifies us is our commitment to the proposition that all men are created equal, endowed by their Creator with certain unalienable rights. And what we are missing, Boyd, and what we need to get back is a commitment to the kinds of beliefs and principles that used to support that unity. And that is why I've declared the month of June to be Fidelity Month. And we'll be celebrating the second Fidelity Month this coming June. And Fidelity Month is meant to be an occasion when all Americans of all faiths, all races, all traditions rededicate ourselves to those principles that used to be the sources of our unity. Fidelity to God. That was shared by Jews, Christians, Protestants, Catholics, LDS, Baptists, it didn't matter. Fidelity to God united us. Fidelity to spouses and families. Being a real father or mother to your children. Not turning that job over to the devices,
right.
and so forth. And then third, fidelity to country and community. Remembering what John F. Kennedy said, ask not what your country can do for you, ask what you can do for your country. Same for your community.
We're going to stay with my conversation with Robbie George, again, that aired on Sunday Edition on KSL 5 TV. When we come back, we're going to close out that conversation, that fidelity to family, to community, to country. Those founding virtues that made all the difference do make all the difference. And Robbie George will share with us a sweet memory, a powerful memory that was imprinted of his father who happened to pass away over the weekend. We'll share that tender moment and an important lesson for all of us when we come back. Stick around.
Think again on Inside Sources with Boyd Matheson.
Our friends at Hercules First Federal Credit Union have one more opportunity for you to grow stronger financially together with Hercules in your community. Hercules Credit Union has a home court advantage loan. Buying your first home is a big decision and can be a real challenge, a real headache these days. So let the mortgage experts at Hercules find the right loan for you, even if you don't have the money for a large down payment. With Home Court Advantage Loan with Hercules First Federal Credit Union, you can have up to 100% loan-to-value financing, low down payments, all without the headaches and hassle to give you confidence to move forward. With Hercules, they've been doing this since 1946 in community. Taylorsville, Harriman, Riverton, and Salt Lake City, you can find their locations. Or, as always, with our friends at Hercules, you can find them online at HerculesCU.com. That's HerculesCU.com.
Wherever you find yourself on the road of life.
The freeway blocked because of the jackknife truck trailer.
It's better with guidance from the KSL traffic team.
It looks like traffic there is starting to move again.
Time your commute with traffic and weather together every 10 minutes on the 9s, mornings and afternoons.
On KSL News Radio.
I'm getting vaccinated with Prevnar 20, a Pfizer vaccine.
So am I, because I'm at risk for pneumococcal pneumonia.
If you're 19 or older with chronic conditions like asthma, diabetes, COPD, or heart disease, or are 65 or older, you are at increased risk for pneumococcal pneumonia. Ask your doctor or pharmacist about Prevnar 20, pneumococcal 20-valent conjugate vaccine. It can help protect you against pneumococcal pneumonia in just one dose. Even if you've already been vaccinated with other pneumonia vaccines, Prevnar 20 may help provide added protection. Prevnar 20 is approved for adults to help prevent infections from 20 strains of the bacteria that cause pneumococcal pneumonia. Continued approval may depend on a supportive study. Don't get Prevnar 20 if you've had a severe allergic reaction to the vaccine or its ingredients. Adults with weakened immune systems may have a lower response to the vaccine. Side effects include pain and swelling at the injection site, fatigue, headache, muscle, and joint pain. For full prescribing information, please call 1-855-213-2138 or visit Prevnar20.com.
Tim Jr. here from RGS Exteriors, and I'm proud to tell you we don't lay off employees when things get tough. During the pandemic, we didn't let one of our installers go. Instead, we had them clean and remodel our offices so they could still get paid. Remember the 2008 housing crisis? It was a financial nightmare for even the biggest contractors. Still, we didn't lay off a single worker. Nope, we sacrificed profits to keep paying everyone. Look, when the economy's down, most contractors are quick to lay off their workers. It's the easiest way to save money when times get tight. But at RGS Exteriors, we're loyal to our people. You know why? Because it's the right thing to do. People first, people always. That's the RGS way. For gutters, siding, windows, and more, call RGS Exteriors at 801-280-3110 or visit rgsexteriors.com. That's rgsexteriors.com, 801-280-3110.
Get deeper insights on the news from Inside Sources.
If you're just joining us, we're staying with the conversation here that I had with Professor Robbie George from Princeton, one of the great scholars, great thinkers as it relates to the Constitution and civic virtues. As we had this sit-down opportunity, he was here in the state of Utah, spoke at the Wheatley Institute down on the campus of Brigham Young University. In the previous segment, we discussed the constitutional principles and the civic virtues that propel our society forward. And then we pivoted just a little bit to this whole idea of fidelity. And the fidelity that Robbie George was speaking of was fidelity to God, to country, to community, to family, and looking at it in a little different way. At the time of this interview with Robbie George, he had received notice that his father, 98 years old, was getting close to the end of his life back in West Virginia. Fortunately, Robbie George delivered his speech, kept his commitment, as he said he knew his father would want him to, and he made it back to West Virginia in time to be with his father before he passed away over the weekend. And so let's pick up my conversation with Robbie George and some important lessons from a father to son.
I know this is a tender time for you from a family standpoint, but it's those principles that we learn, not just sitting in a pew or listening to a sermon or reading a scriptural text, but by watching people that matter in our lives and community live them. You shared with me an experience you saw early on of your father that I think has become both defining in you, present in you clearly, but share that with us.
When I was 12 years old, I watched my World War II veteran hero father dash across an open field to rush into a burning house to rescue a paraplegic man in a wheelchair. And that was my dad. He has lived a blessed life, all the way from being fished out of the English Channel in World War II when he was crossing the channel in a troop carrier to fight in the Normandy campaign, and he somehow survived that through that episode with rushing into the burning building to rescue the paraplegic man. I learned the virtues, not from the government, not from the courts, not from the economy, and not all that much, to tell you the truth, from school. Yeah. You learn them from mom and dad, grandmother and grandfather, auntie and uncle, pastor, coach, teacher, for those human beings who know you by name. Yeah. Unlike the courts, unlike the government. Well, if they know you by name in the courts, you're in trouble. Right. Unlike the government, unlike the economy. Now, it's very important that all those big institutions be in good health, but they can only be in good health if the people who constitute them, one way or another, are virtuous. And those virtues are transmitted most fundamentally by the family, supported by the church and other institutions of what we call civil society.
We always say community and culture lead, politics is downstream, and it all follows. But it is a cottage industry. It starts with those principles, because that's what enables us when people know you by name, when there is that personal connection. Everything changes, even across our differences. I think that's how we get to dignity, because we not only see the dignity in the other, we see the divinity in the other.
Well, exactly.
And that's a different conversation.
Exactly right. If you've raised more than one child, and I know many of the people listening to us will have big gangs of kids, you know, even if you've just raised two, you know they're different. No two kids are alike, and their needs are different. And even when it comes to discipline, you have to be a little gentler with some. You can be a little tougher with others. What works in terms of education for one may be different from what works for the other. Government can't take account of those differences. The courts can't take account of those differences. Big corporations can't take account of those differences. Mom and dad can. Yeah. Grandma and grandpa can. Auntie and uncle, coach, teacher, pastor. They know you by name. And not only know you by name, they know that you're on the more sensitive side, or maybe the more extroverted side, or they know where your strengths are, but they also know where you need a little extra help and support. Being a human being is an individual business at a certain level. And individuals differ. Yeah. And if we're gonna be a virtuous people, then the people responsible for forming these individuals, beginning with the parents, have got to do their job.
Final question for you, Robbie, before we let you go on a very busy day. Get us to we always like to get to the essence of the essence. What is it when it comes to the Constitution and civic virtue? What do you wish that we were thinking different, doing different, or talking differently about?
I think we have to just stop treating our fellow citizens who disagree with us as enemies. Just stop that. Our disagreements are profound. As you know, I have strong views on some very fundamental issues: sanctity of human life, marriage as the conjugal union of husband and wife, religious freedom and the rights of conscience. But in my work at Princeton University and in the broader academic community, as you would imagine, I spend a lot of time with a lot of people who disagree with me about those deeply held, cherished, even identity-forming for me beliefs. But I have had to learn, and I have to discipline myself to do it, to understand that these people with whom I disagree are not bad people. They are not my enemies to be defeated and destroyed. They are my fellow citizens and my friends, and that our relationship has to be one of friendship despite those disagreements. Now, we're going to be struggling hard, sometimes against each other in the political domain. Marriage is either going to be the union of a man or a woman, or it's going to be something very, very different, right? So we're going to fight about that. But we need to do it using the proper forms of deliberative democracy as established by the Constitution. We have to share a commitment to that, despite our differences on these substantive moral issues. Be joined together in that commitment to the procedures of democracy. and to a respect for each other's rights, the rights to freedom of speech and freedom of religion and so forth and so on. And we need to recognize each other as friends, civic friends, fellow citizens.
That's my conversation with Professor Robbie George from Princeton University. Again, he was in town last week, spoke at the Wheatley Institute on the campus of Brigham Young University. Important conversation about constitutional principles and civic virtues, the virtues that actually propel us forward as a society and actually create unity across our differences as we see the dignity and the divinity in our fellow travelers. All right, we'll step aside for some bottom-of-the-hour news. More Inside Sources coming up next on KSL News Radio. Stick around.
It's 2:30 at KSL News Radio. I'm Dan Bonas. KSL's top story this hour, Utah State Senator Todd Weiler will be undergoing cancer treatment once again. KSL News Radio's Alexandria Bonilla reports.
Senator Weiler described his diagnosis as an aggressive form of prostate cancer while speaking with KSL TV. He will begin radiation treatment this week, lasting an hour a day for 38 days. Weiler had his prostate removed back in 2020 after a cancer diagnosis, but recent tests show the cancer is still present. He said he's feeling optimistic, and the treatment is mostly preventative.
Weiler does not plan to resign, will continue his campaign for re-election. Our top national story this hour from ABC News. A member of President Biden's cabinet is stepping down. ABC News White House correspondent Karen Travers has details.
Secretary of Housing and Urban Development Marcia Fudge is stepping down from her cabinet position later this month. President Biden says in a statement that Fudge's, quote, vision, passion, and focus on increasing economic opportunity have been assets to our country. He adds he's grateful for her contributions toward a housing system that, quote, works for all Americans. Karen Travers, ABC News, the White House.
And your money at this moment, the Dow Jones average closing trading today up 46 points, while the NASDAQ was down 65. The S&P 500 was down about 5 points. And a KSL weather. Looks like we'll see rain tomorrow, possibly snow on Wednesday. That's next. KSL News Time, 2:31.
It's a priority for us at this station to bring you all sides of a story and to talk about the news fairly, completely.
Get all the facts and be really aware. Utah's Morning News with us, Tim and Amanda.
Weekday mornings 5 to 9 on KSL News Radio.
Hi, I'm Henry Winkler. My eyes are very important to me. My eyes connect me with everything I love. I loved my late father-in-law dearly. He always lit up a room, but his vision dimmed with age. He had age-related macular degeneration, or AMD. And since partnering with Apellis, I've learned there's an advanced form of dry AMD called geographic atrophy, or GA. His struggle with vision loss made me want to help others know about GA's warning signs. For some, colors appear dull or washed out. For others, hazy or blurred vision make it hard to see details, like fine print on price tags. Many have trouble seeing in the dark, making driving at night difficult. GA gets worse over time and cannot be reversed. If you think you have GA, don't wait. Treatments are available. Ask a retina specialist about FDA-approved treatments for GA and go to GAWon'tWait.com.
The following is a test of the emergency alert system.
Derek Overstreet, founder of the New Millennium Group. We're a financial planning firm. Listen, we're fiduciaries. We have advisors standing by right now to take your call. That's 888-999-6370, 888-999-6370. The reason you're going to want to call is we're going to help you retire 3 to 5 years before you thought possible. Now, imagine how that would be if you could actually retire 3 to 5 years sooner than your plan was. The way we do this is by putting together a step-by-step plan taking into consideration any rental properties that you have, any pension income that you have, your Social Security. Listen, we put that all together for you in writing. It will allow us to build your income based on inflation. You know, inflation has been rapidly rising. You and I both need a plan that whatever we start out our income at, in 5 or 10 years, we're going to need 40% more income. So if you're one of those people listening and you'd like a plan in writing, give us a call at 888-999-6370. That's 888-999-6370, or go to utahsfinancialplanner.com.
Traffic and weather together, brought to you by Sinclair's Dino Pay app. Save up to 20 cents per gallon. Here's Ricky Meese.
It's a nice drive on the Valley freeways, but we do have a crash in Murray, 4500 South, 1100 East. Join Weber State University March 15th for a celebration of indigenous culture and heritage, featuring Native American and classical musicians, dancers, and more poets weaving harmony on stage. Tickets at weber.edu/Browning Presents. Ricky Meese in the KSL Traffic Center.
And our KSL weather, clouds move in today with a few mountain snow showers, and we can expect valley rain and mountain snow in northern Utah tomorrow, a chance for valley snow on Wednesday. Right now, we're at 55 degrees. It's mostly cloudy. I'm Dan Bomas from the KSL Common Spirit Health Studios. Listen online at kslnewsradio.com. We're Utah's news, traffic, and weather station.
Inside Sources. Inside Sources. America's voice of reason. Boyd Matheson on Utah's home for elevated conversation. Inside Sources on KSL News Radio.
Well, we spent a lot of time talking about the president, the Oval Office, the mantle, and all the things that happen inside of that. But we often forget the role of the First Lady in our country. And we pointed out on the show many times the influence, the powerful influence of First Ladies, even going back to Eleanor Roosevelt. She was the first to address the nation after Pearl Harbor. I actually think her speech was the better speech. She was way better than her husband on that day in calming the American people. And so they have this really unique role to play, but we often kind of skip past that. First Ladies provide our presidents with so many things, and we'll have a first gentleman before we know. The important thing is the relationship and the dynamics of the relationship that I think is really instructive and important for us to understand, and that requires us to get past the headlines. Well, someone who has dug into that, Katie Rogers, of course, is the White House correspondent for the New York Times. She's been there since 2014, and she has traveled the world covering 2 presidential administrations. She's written extensively about domestic policy, foreign policy, and the complicated dynamics. All families are messy, including first families. New book out just last month called The American Woman, The Transformation of the Modern First Lady, from Hillary Clinton to Jill Biden. And Katie joins us on the line. Thanks for joining us today.
Thanks so much for having me.
So let's dig into this. Obviously, things have shifted a lot between just those first ladies, between the Hillary Clinton and Jill Biden, as well as across the generations. But give us some of the high-level things that have stood out to you in terms of the transformation of that role.
Yeah, I mean, so a few things. One of the reasons I started with Hillary Clinton was because of how quickly things were changing in the 90s. It was sort of an interesting decade for changes in technology, changes in our politics. The Clinton impeachment was sort of a precursor to what we see now with Republicans in Congress. And so basically, against that backdrop of so much change, one of the top level things to me in my reporting and research and talking to some of these women is that the role really has stayed strangely kind of set in amber. A lot of the expectations about the role, involve wanting these women to be sort of helpmates and throw the Easter egg role every year. But if it involves policy, they are expected to be very careful in their pursuit of legislation or a platform. So really, I think the most interesting thing to me in the argument the book makes is that our culture has changed so much, but really our expectations for the role have not.
That's fascinating. And so much of it is As you said, the dynamics, social media, even media in general, in terms of the way the first ladies are covered, all of that has changed so much, and yet there is still that kind of behind-the-scenes strategic dynamic in that relationship. Kind of describe that for us and what you learned across these different first ladies.
Yeah, I mean, they're all so different that really the only unifying thread about all of them is that they all believed their husband could win, and that involved either minimizing their careers to make sure that could happen, and even in somebody like Michelle Obama's case, deciding that this was something that she would support, even though she, by all accounts, really hates politics and had 2 young children that she was really reluctant to bring into this fishbowl. But really another, I guess, common thread is these women really channel their husbands and mirror them in public. And even somebody like Melania Trump, she's a very sort of mysterious figure, I think, compared to a lot of the other first ladies, but she is somebody her husband talks to a lot. They spend time together, when the public doesn't see them. One of the scenes I have from my book is she would go sort of perch on his bed at the end of the day while he talked to advisors, and she would sort of learn how he was feeling through osmosis and then kind of channel that with her own advisors. So they're all, they are confidants to each other, in every case. And really it's an isolating experience. And I think it's a singular one that these women have with their husbands.
Yeah, I'm so glad you used that term, isolating, because so many people think, there's the fame, there's the big state dinners and all of these public appearances, and yet it is a lonely crowd, to be sure. And often I think that had to be part of the challenge, is
totally
being isolated, being that one person, the only other person besides the president in many of these conversations. How do they navigate that and just that feeling of kind of being off balance, isolated, and that's just a different perspective?
Yeah, I mean, a lot of them figure out how they can escape without being unseen, and it's easier for the first lady to do that. Melania Trump would escape to New York more frequently than the public knew. Jill Biden leaves, several days ahead of time, sometimes to go to Wilmington or Rehoboth, where the Bidens have homes. They find ways to sort of get out of Washington and be with either friends or family. Michelle Obama would often have friends to Camp David or go on trips. But really, I mean, I talked to Jill Biden for this book, and she asked me at one point, how would you feel if you never would be able to drive a car again? Which is just something so simple that they will never really get to have. When, a first lady wants to open the window at the White House, the Secret Service has to clear out the entire ellipse first. So it's a really, they have to work hard at, grabbing these bits of normalcy. And it's still never really normal. It's a weird life. I mean, it's very singular and privileged, but I've been in the bubble, when you're with the president in the motorcade or traveling with him, it's very reinforced. And what you see of the world is so different than what, you or I would see as civilians.
Yeah.
So.
No question. And there's been some interesting parallels drawn, even there at the Times, talking about these unique parallels between Jill Biden and Nancy Reagan, both of them having to deal with husbands who wanted to run again. And, do you preserve the legacy? Do you do the ambition in the campaign? What's your sense in terms of how that plays out? And again, the role of the first lady in that?
Yeah, I mean, I think there are a lot of questions. And it's an interesting parallel. It's one that the Bidens don't like, is being compared to Nancy Reagan, but they have some similarities in terms of protectiveness over their husbands. And in, Joe Biden's case, deciding to run again at age 81 is something that the family had a lot of conversations about before he decided to do it. And I actually talked to her for the book, and she said, I saw what he did as VP. I saw how much that took out of him. And now as president, you should see what he takes upstairs every day. And she held her arms out wide and to sort of mime these briefing books that he goes through every day. So she was sort of saying that she's concerned of the wear and tear on him, but she also said it's his decision. And if you know anything about the Biden orbit, Joe Biden has been its North Star for 50 years. And this is a person that if he wants to do something, everyone around him is going to mobilize to make it happen. So the idea that he would be pushed, by his wife to run if he didn't want to, is, knowing what I know about them doesn't really, reflect reality. She might have supported him in this, but, I don't think she has the power to sort of drive a re-election campaign without his interest in it, if that makes sense.
Yeah, no question about that. And I love that perspective of you've seen it from inside of the bubble. And there is a way that those things take place and happen, and I think they're united in that in a powerful way. It is both a sense of duty, a commitment to country, an idea that we can still make a difference, and as you said, the fierce loyalty of the First Lady. She has an important role in all of that. The book is called American Woman: The Transformation of the Modern First Lady, from Hillary Clinton to Jill Biden. Katie Rogers from the New York Times, thank you so much for joining us. Fantastic perspective, great read. Thanks for joining us.
Thank you. Bye.
All right, we'll step aside for one last break. More Inside Sources coming up next.
It's time for spring cleaning. Beat the spring cleaning rush with big savings from Zerorez this month. You're not the only one who is tired of winter. Your carpets are too. Think about the dust, dirt, dander, and germs in your carpet, upholstery, and air ducts with nowhere to go. Get rid of that gunk in your home by calling the cleaning heroes at Zerorez. With Zerorez's platinum-rated cleaning systems and environmentally friendly ZR water, they'll extract all that nasty out so your home will look and smell like a home should. Get 3 rooms Zerorez-ified from Salt Lake's #1 carpet cleaner starting at just $99. And they'll throw in a 4th room free. Take 25% off your air duct cleaning to get that true spring cleaning feel. You owe it to yourself and your family to breathe healthy, happy, and clean. Call Zerorez at 801-288-9376 or go to Zerorez.com and say you want the KSL special. Zerorez. Spell it backwards or forwards. It's the right way to clean.
The KSL News Radio Movie Show comes to My Hearing Centers this Friday from 10 to 1. But first, discover what My Hearing Centers can do for you. My Hearing Centers uses advanced technology to diagnose and treat hearing loss. These comprehensive evaluations determine the best treatment options. Then enjoy lifetime support with regular check-ins, cleaning, and maintenance. Call My Hearing Centers at 801-701-1629. 801-701-1629 for more details. My Hearing Centers has offices from Ogden to St. George.
The life of a small business owner. Keeping the lights on, calling all the shots. And then there's workplace accidents. 500-degree ovens, rusty nails. Danger lurks around every corner. Workplace accidents can happen, but there is an easy way to keep your employees covered. Talk to your agent about workers' comp coverage from Pi, or go to piinsurance.com and get a quote. Safety first, then Pi Insurance. Individual rates, offerings, and savings may vary, subject to policy terms and conditions. Not available in all states and situations.
New home for the new year? Sounds nice, doesn't it? What about new lowered rates? Now's the time to step into a gorgeous new Nilsson home with less commute times, easy access, and with rates that have dropped more significantly than all year. Less really is more in this case. Less maintenance, less commute, and less money per month. Move north with Nilsson Homes. Choose from beautiful townhomes to Rambler communities for all stages of life. Most of all, Nilsson Homes are move-in ready and close to what you love and enjoy with easy commutes. Nilsson Homes has been building across the Wasatch Front for over 45 years, accommodating all the things you need, combined with the things you love. Make sure to ask about special savings. Experience your new home for the new year. Visit Nilsson Homes Communities at nilssonhomes.com. Nilson homes.com. That's nilssonhomes.com.
Advertising used to be simple. Your options were radio, TV, newspaper, and let's not forget the yellow pages. Now it seems like a tidal wave of options. Podcast, cable TV, streaming, OTT, CTV, audio networks, smart speakers. On top of that, you need digital marketing for your website along with SEM, SEO, display, video, YouTube, email, and all the social media platforms. Look, you're the expert in your business. Wouldn't it be nice to have an expert to market you? We are Bonneville Salt Lake, the local marketing and media company you know and trust. We reach customers across all digital and social platforms and have the reach of traditional advertising available as well. We find your customer anytime, any place, anywhere on any device here in Utah or anywhere in the world. We work to optimize your results with our in-house local team of experts, providing you with qualified leads, not just impressions. Contact Stephanie Palmer at KSL for a free consultation, including a complete digital audit with no obligation or cost to you. Email spalmer@ksl.com. That's spalmer@ksl.com.
The time has finally come. Saturday, March 16th at America First Field for the return of royalty. The Utah Royals are back. Be there as head coach Amy Rodriguez, Kate Delfava, Manny Bogarsh, and more set out to reclaim the Utah Royals legacy. Tickets are available now. Visit UtahRoyals.com or call 844-REAL-TIX to reserve your seats. The return of royalty. The Utah Royals home opener. Saturday, March 16th. Be more than a fan. Be part of a new era.
Hi, I'm Dr. Ryan Black, speaking for the National Kidney Foundation of Utah and Idaho. I'm not only an emergency room doctor that works with Utah emergency physicians, but I'm also a kidney transplant recipient. After my kidney transplant, the National Kidney Foundation of Utah and Idaho helped me with a scholarship to study pre-med at Westminster College. Did you know that March is National Kidney Month? 10% of Americans are affected by kidney disease, and there are over 70,000 people on the transplant waiting list. In fact, every year, more people die from kidney failure than from prostate or breast cancer. Kidney failure is most often caused by diabetes or high blood pressure. The National Kidney Foundation of Utah invites you to a free kidney health screening. March is Kidney Month. Visit kidneyut.org or call the local Kidney Foundation office at 801-226-5111 to sign up for your free kidney screening today. That's 801-226-5111.
Derek Overstreet, founder of the New Millennium Group. We're a financial planning firm. Listen, we're fiduciaries. We have advisors standing by right now to take your call. That's 888-999-6370. 888-999-6370. The reason you're going to want to call is we're going to help you retire 3 to 5 years before you thought possible. Now, imagine how that would be if you could actually retire 3 to 5 years sooner than your plan was. The way we do this is by putting together a step-by-step plan, taking into consideration any rental properties that you have, any pension income that you have, your Social Security. Listen, we put that all together for you in writing. It will allow us to build your income based on inflation. You know, inflation has been rapidly rising. You and I both need a plan that whatever we start out our income at, in 5 or 10 years, we're going to need 40% more income. So if you're one of those people listening and you'd like a plan in writing, give us a call at 888-999-6370. That's 888-999-6370, or go to utahsfinancialplanner.com.
Getting help with electrical repairs is easier than you think. All you have to do is call Any Hour Services or schedule an appointment at anyhourservices.com. No one helps more homeowners than Any Hour Services.
Inside Sources with Boyd Matheson.
Our goal every day on Inside Sources is to help you divide the rage from the reason, elevate the conversation, connect the dots, and make the news make sense in your world. We have conversations with great thinkers, with great leaders, and great people who are just out there making a difference in the world. Now, we do talk about politics, but only so we can discuss society and culture. And then we explore society and culture so we can discuss principles and the people in America and the state of Utah who actually live them and apply them every day. We bring the best and brightest minds to the state of Utah, and we love to take the Utah model and send it out to our nation's capital and beyond. Every day on Inside Sources, you'll be part of that conversation. To help you understand things in a different way, we'll get you to think again about what you think you know, but most important, we're going to help you have confidence to have crucial conversations in your community and in your own home.
Join Inside Sources with Boyd Matheson, 1 to 3 on KSL News Radio.
With the 3 things you need to know this hour, I'm Dan Bomas. First, Utah State Senator Todd Weiler thought he was done with prostate cancer after surgery a few years ago, but it's come back. He needs treatment again. Second, it won't be long before you won't need a front license plate on your car anymore. Third, a member of President Biden's cabinet is stepping down. Marcia Fudge has served as Secretary of Housing and Urban Development. Right now, 55 degrees, mostly cloudy in Salt Lake City. And back to Inside Sources on KSL News Radio.
Hear elevated conversation on crucial issues. Boyd Matheson on Inside Sources.
Welcome back to Inside Sources here on KSL News Radio. It's great to be with you today. As always, I am Boyd Matheson. As we round out the program today, if you missed any of our conversations, you're always going to want to go back to the podcast. Just go to kslpodcast.com, click on Inside Sources. You can go through any of the individual segments of the show, pick up one of those guests that you might have missed. And today there were a number of them. Robert Sherman from News Nation joined us live from Tel Aviv to give us the latest from on the ground in Israel. What's the real feel and flavor there? What is it that people are struggling with? Where are the Israeli people in relation to what's going on? And, of course, a bit of a red line controversy between Benjamin Netanyahu and President Biden in terms of what a red line is or isn't, who it applies to and why. And so that's going to be a very interesting conversation moving forward. Eric Boehm talked to us about the State of the Union address, and in particular about funding for Social Security, one of the Biden administration proposals in raising the cap on some of those things, as the president said, to get the wealthy to pay their fair share. The only problem with that is that's really not how that works. This is a pay forward. It's like Eric described it as a conveyor belt of money coming out of the current generation going to the retired generation. And they may be able to buy an extra year or two in terms of the solvency problem that Social Security is under, but it does nothing to really get to the root of the problem in terms of how you change that dynamic moving forward. So Eric Boehm always has some great perspective there as well. And then we also featured my conversation. If you missed this, you just need to go back. It is brilliant. Professor Robbie George from Princeton had the opportunity to do a sit-down, deep-dive interview with Robbie George after he spoke at the Wheatley Institute down at Brigham Young University last week, and just some great principles talking about the Constitution and civic virtues, the role that we all have. It's so interesting to me that we look at these institutions in our society that are dependent on good people doing good things. And whether it's a local business that needs employees to show up on time and to be honest, whether it's a court case that needs a jury that can't be bought and paid for, all of these institutions, government, business, community, they all require good people doing good things, virtuous people. But none of those institutions can actually create them. They're created, as Robbie George pointed out to us, with moms and dads and brothers and sisters and aunts and uncles and Little League coaches and pastors and teachers and on down the line. That's how it happens. And community is such an essential part of all of that. And we had a wonderful conversation about Ramadan, and interesting in the context of what's going on in the Middle East. And as we looked at that and explored that, my mind has gone back. I so have holy envy for so many things that take place during the month of Ramadan. It is a physical and emotionally taxing challenge for those who observe Ramadan. It involves fasting from sunrise to sunset, and that's what most of us think about. We think about fasting in Ramadan. But it's staying up late to pray. It's spending time with family and loved one. It's waking up in the pre-dawn hours to have an early meal together, praying 5 times a day, reading the Quran more than usual, slowing down in those prayers. And for many, it's attending that extended evening worship that can go on for several hours. To me, the interesting thing is this is a month, Ramadan, of intense introspection. During which Muslims are to avoid conflict and weigh their words and deeds especially carefully. I love that as a framing. I think we all could use a little Ramadan in our thinking as we look to avoid the unnecessary conflicts, as we weigh our words a little bit better, as we weigh our deeds a little bit more carefully. I think that's such an important thing. Of course, charity is always part of Muslims' tradition and their activities year-round, but there's an increased focus on those good deeds during Ramadan. And one of my favorite sayings about Ramadan says, Ramadan is one of the doors of mercy flung open as an opportunity for soul cleansing. And to have a month like Ramadan to really be intentional about things that matter and to remove from your life things that don't matter is something I think everybody could benefit from. And this is my favorite of all the quotes that I have around Ramadan, and it is that Ramadan is the month whose beginning is mercy, whose middle is forgiveness, and whose end is freedom. I love that. So it begins with mercy, and we all need that. We need to receive it. We need to share it. The middle is forgiveness. We all need that. We all need to extend it. And as you do that, the end is actually freedom. And we become free from so many of the things that hold us back, the things that get in the way of our important relationships in our homes and families, in our neighborhoods and communities, as countries, as a society. And we can move those things out, and that is when we become ultimately free. So Ramadan is the month whose beginning is mercy, whose middle is forgiveness, and whose end is freedom.